Okay, perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you all for joining again. This is a webinar for the Farmland Protection Staff Capacity Grant. Get my mouse here. Boy. So at the start, I just want to mention that we've had a couple questions come in, and we're definitely encouraging any and all questions. And as a reminder, they all need to be submitted in written form to me at that email address. And the reason that we do this is so that everybody, all applicants and vendors, have the same information, and that it's all about fairness and equity for everybody. So I'll do my best on this webinar today to answer anything that may be in the RFP or I don't want to say obvious, but just more straightforward. And other more technical questions or specific things will have to be in written form. And then what we'll do is be posting those similar to the recording. It'll be on the department website as a resource for folks to access those questions and answers. And right now we have May 20th as the deadline for when those answers will be posted. I talked to our internal counsel, and we are going to try to get like a first wave of questions maybe up by the end of the month or early May. And then anything else that comes in a little later will get up by May 20th. So yeah, it gives you some time to process today's webinar, refer to the RFP some more, and have a couple of weeks to get some questions in. And then I also want to mention this is a pilot program. This is new. It's a new program offered through the department, and I'm new. I have worked here for about a year at the department and have been in the state of New York for a little over about a year and a half now. Relocated from California. I was working for an agricultural land trust there for about 9 years, the Marin Agricultural Land Trust, and was fortunate to do all sorts of land trustee things, monitoring easements and writing baselines, and closed a couple easements and supported the acquisition team. And we had some stewardship grants, a grant program within our land trust to provide for farmers and ranchers. So that was neat to kind of create those and manage those grant programs and see some impact on the ground. And so I relocated about a year and a half ago and started with the state in April of last year, and feeling lucky to kind of lead this new pilot program here, the staff capacity grant. So high level, the purpose and overview of this program: it's all about supporting the local agricultural and farmland protection goals to build staff capacity, whether to initiate or accelerate. And we'll go into kind of what those mean, the two categories, a little later. But initiate or accelerate farmland protection projects. It's all about increasing staff capacity for the planning and implementation of farmland protection at the local and regional level. And then the role of whether it's new or expanded or altered staff capacity should be to seek out, evaluate, and complete agricultural conservation easement projects across the state. So the whole point of this program is to add bandwidth, horsepower to whether it's a kind of, whether it's just a board of directors or a really, kind of smaller staff organization or a bigger organization with bigger staff. This program, it's all about moving the needle and having impact for everybody. So we'll go into a little bit more how we try to get at that. Let's see here. Of course, this is again okay, just as a reminder, I wanted to put a couple quotes and slides up of the statutory requirements, and that this program is rooted in state law, and that from, I believe it's Article 6925 AAA, Section 321 here, it states that agricultural lands are irreplaceable state assets and that the state must explore ways to sustain the state's valuable farm economy and to protect farm operations. So again, kind of that's part of what this program is getting at. And in the same article, 25 AAA section 325A, another kind of quote is, when funds are available, a program is hereby established for the purpose of awarding state assistance to not-for-profit conservation organizations for activities that will assist counties and municipalities with their agricultural and farmland protection efforts. So again, empowering land trusts to accelerate and move the goals within counties and municipalities with it to farmland protection. A little bit more about the nuts and bolts of the program, available funding. The total pot of funding for this program is $1 million. The maximum award per proposal or applicant is $300,000. And each applicant is eligible to submit one proposal. The timeline, just as a reminder, the RFP was released on March 24th. The deadline for questions, again, that's a little soft. I don't think that should be like a soft line for questions. May 1st. We'd love to have all of them in by then, but we understand if there's going to be some questions that spill over into May. And then we'll have questions and answers posted by the 20th. And if there's some later questions that come in, we may even post a second time or a third time after that. Like we may try to get one wave of questions up right around May 1st, get another one around the 20th. And then if there's other questions that do come in, we don't want to not answer those. So there may be another posting of questions after Memorial Day or something like that. And then the deadline for proposals is Friday, June 26th. So we still have lots of time, 4 p.m. And then the goal is to announce awards by September 1st, hopefully earlier. And then we'll host a awardee webinar sometime in September. Most likely that date has not been determined yet, but we'll get one soonish. So basic eligibility. Proposals for funding will be accepted from New York counties, municipalities, soil and water conservation districts, and not-for-profit conservation organizations, mainly land trusts, most likely. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there's those two categories for applicants. And those categories are, again, a group organization intended for a hiring of a first farmland protection. So if you do not have, currently you do not have farmland protection staff or anybody dedicated to closing conservation easements or working through easements, possibly a small organization or just a board of directors, that situation, that you would be in the first category. And then the second category is hiring of additional farmland protection staff. So you already have staff that are doing farmland protection work, or you have at least part-time staff doing that work, and you want to maybe redirect or reform a job titled, job responsibilities to build out your team further and to accelerate the pace or expand the reach of farmland protection within your the project pipeline. So that's the gist. We wanted to make it fair and equitable for any size organization that has maybe different experience around farmland protection. There may be some folks that have been doing farmland protection for 30 or 40 years. They have a whole team. And then there might be some folks that are finding that they are, more recently interested in starting up farmland protection. And we wanted to kind of keep those on a somewhat level playing field. And we are looking for folks that want to move the needle and increase their impact in their local region. So whether, you're kind of quote unquote like a powerhouse and farmland protection has been in your mission for a while, or if you are just starting off and want to get into the farmland protection game and work towards closing an easement or two, both valuable in, kind of different ways, but both great sources, reasons for impact and stuff. So that's the two different categories. The eligible costs for this grant, with it being staff capacity, obviously salary and wages, benefits, everything that comes with a benefit package, health, dental insurance, vacation, mileage reimbursement if they're the new staff hires driving around to different farms or whatever they may be doing, and then equipment with the job, so a computer and telephone, training costs to get them to any sort of trainings, and then supplies and materials that are associated with anything within their work plan. And then things that are not eligible, any sort of work or expenses prior to the funding agreement, that would not be eligible. Any costs associated with another state contract. So, DEC or FPIG, for example, cannot combine state funding sources and leverage those. And then any cost associated with a contract employer or consultant, that will not be eligible. And then, can't use the grant to pay rent or utilities or other overhead costs like that. And any otherwise eligible project costs that are associated with any other employee of the applicant who is not associated with an award rising from this RFP. So hopefully that's a pretty clear distinction between what's eligible and ineligible for costs. Again, this sort of speaks back to that category 1, category 2. The map on the right highlights the counties in New York that have not participated or had an FPIG award. And so we wanted to kind of call that out and say, there's quite a few places that have not closed an easement using the FPIG program. And there will be bonus points awarded to folks that are applying if that's your geographical scope is within those counties. And that doesn't mean that the folks that have used FPIG that, are familiar with that program and use it, you'll have an opportunity for bonus points or what we're calling preference points as well too. But again, this is just one technique to sort of level the playing field, for folks that are maybe just starting to kind of get into farmland protection and kind of calling that out and saying, hey, they're making an effort to try something new here and novel to their area. Just kind of going over like dates, submission information. Again, that deadline is Friday, June 26th. Mark the calendar. Exciting day. For the folks that have been have applied for FPIG this round, you're already familiar with the statewide financial system, but that's the system that New York State uses for all their grant programs now. So you have to get into the system and have your information in there, and everything's submitted through there. There's also information on our website, and I know you can't click that link, but we can get you that website if you want to link to it. And then the magic word to search for in SFS is FPSC01, which stands for Farmland Protection Staff Capacity Round 1. So pilot program, hoping that it is received well and people are interested. And again, written questions to me at that email address, please. Okay, a little bit more about submission information. I just kind of wanted to prep folks for what SFS can sort of feel a little rigid, or it can be a little tricky to navigate or a little clunky. So just to provide a little context to what you're getting into in that program, there'll be there's actually just in this program there's only 3 types of responses: the upload, the text, and the numeric. So the upload, there's one of 2 ways to do that. There might be 3 of the questions have documents that you need to pull down. You got to download them, and then you'll have to complete them and then upload them back into the system. And then there's like some questions that may ask for a PDF file or an Excel file or a JPEG or something like that, like a screenshot. And so hopefully that's pretty straightforward to get things uploaded. Text, your standard, like, text box, open narrative form, numeric numbers, pretty straightforward. A question like, how many easements do you currently hold? It would just be a number. And then the work plan, we're going to dive into that in pretty good detail later, but it's an important document because it'll serve as the foundation for your reporting, and it's going to set the tone for kind of your whole, what we'll be tracking. If awarded, what we'll be tracking will come from that work plan. Again, just to kind of set the tone a little bit, there's 34 questions. And I just, kind of wanted to add that this is an opportunity to share your story and your strategy as an organization around farmland protection. I think it's a good chance for applicants to just set the stage for us, let us know kind of where you're coming from, where you're going, how farmland protection, may or may not fit into your mission. And if it hasn't been part of your mission, why is it now? And how this new staff person, plans to add value to your organization and the mission of farmland protection. There's 5 sections within the application. There's a basic applicant information, farmland protection need, organizational readiness, and then the 3 templates that we're going to dive into some detail on, and then the preference points or bonus section. And the scoring criteria actually kind of reflects those same categories generally. And we'll talk about that too. Conflict of interest, always something I'm sure as everybody knows that it's, just something to be really careful of. And I just wanted to kind of point out to be cautious of nepotism and optics or perceived optics when completing your application. And then be alert, if awarded during the whole cycle of just any sort of conflict of interest. Just, good things to kind of keep in mind. Other tips for successful application. I think, how will this additional or expanded role help initiate, accelerate, or sustain farmland protection? I think that's a good kind of question or phrase to keep in mind when thinking about this application. What impact do you anticipate for an employee to provide over the 3-year period? And then all throughout, the work plan and other documents, just be clear on program and organizational strategy and how this employee advances and is a value add to those goals and strategy. Excellent. So yeah, we get into the template section here. Again, this is kind of probably the core of the application. The biggest lift will be these 3 uploads. So there's the farmland protection project pipeline, there's the work plan template, and then the financial workbook template, which is pretty similar to FPIG. If folks are familiar with that, it will look quite familiar. So the first one, again, this kind of goes back to us understanding the story of the applicant and your organization. It's an opportunity for us to see what your current pipeline looks like for your acquisition projects. So as the example here lists, we're looking for the project name or farm name, the status, acreage, type of farm, just kind of the basics of the project that you're currently working on. And I guess, this is, say you may have 1 or 2 families, landowners, companies that you're working with to close an easement. You may be working with 12 or 15. We don't know. And so this is an opportunity for you as an organization to kind of list out who you're currently engaged with. That could be anything from initial inquiry about what a conservation easement is, and you have a family that is interested, to, you are about to close an easement in 2 months. It just helps us understand the, kind of where you're at and the volume that you're currently working with. And so I think this will serve as a helpful piece of the application for us, again, to kind of paint that story of how this potential new hire may fit into your workload. Now we get into the work plan. And this, hoping doesn't come off too complicated or confusing. So I'll try my best to explain how and why we came up with this. Ultimately, we wanted to allow flexibility for applicants to assess their needs and put what they want as a deliverable. But we also, when you hire a staff person, it's not as tangible as I'm going to close an easement, or hey, we have a project and we're going to start at A and get to B. There's kind of a large gradient in between, and we didn't want to necessarily require that all awardees accomplish a certain goal. Again, recognizing that different organizations are at different stages in their farmland protection efforts, we want you as the organizations to come up with what you foresee as the goal over the 3-year period. And so I broke out these 9 different objectives in 3 phases. And I guess the kind of the highest level way of thinking about this is that in phase 1, a new staff person is coming on, and or it's a retooled position from within the organization. And if that's the case, phase 1 is going to kind of already be taken care of, because phase 1 is largely onboarding. Picturing somebody coming to your organization, they may not know the area, they may not know the families that you work with, they may not know the farms that you work with. There's a lot of information that they need to absorb. And so there's, again, the geographical kind of cultural, political, social, orientation of the area. There's technical training internally, do they have the skills to use, GIS or make maps, or, understand documents, whatever the technical training that you may need. Internal relationship building, as everybody knows, when you have staff come on, they're going to get integrated with at least, probably 1 person, maybe 30 people, depending on the size of the organization. So there's that internal relationship building, getting integrated with, teams and staff. And then there's also establishing like external networks. If there's, partners or other players in the community that touch your work. So, your city planners and community members and that external facing work. So phase 1 is largely onboarding, absorbing. Phase 2 is a little bit more advanced in the sense that now this person may be doing a little bit more external work, and they're connecting with families, they're involved with more meetings, there's maybe more project development, or they're just more integrated into kind of the workflow. And then eventually seeking funding, whether that's from the FPIG program here or the NRCS or some other funding source. And then phase 3, funding has been secured at this point. The project is moving forward. Maybe you've completed an easement, you're working into the stewardship phase of things. So that's pretty far advanced in as far as, you've essentially met the goal of completing an easement project eventually in phase 3. And there might be folks that they are going to hire somebody, and that new hire may see several closed easements in their 3-year period. Again, not trying to limit or restrict anything, keeping it very flexible. We're not sure where you're at, but we wanted to give you the space and time to create the work plan for this new hire that fits your organization and where you're currently at. So this is the same exact table, just expanded with 2 columns to the right, one for task and one for performance measurement. And so the idea here is, again, thinking through this program, I wanted to make it as easy as possible for the applicants when they're filling it out, and for all that information that you guys do, the heavy lifting on the front end, for that to carry through in the reporting, so that when annual reporting comes around, it's as easy as possible, and it's not a heavy lift, because we don't want to be making extra work for you. So the idea here is that as you look at this project table, you ask yourself in the organization, what tasks do we want this new hire to complete within these 9 objectives? And you may only, have 5 or 6 of the objectives that are met. If that's your expectations over the 3 years, that's totally fine. And so, you could list out the certain accomplishments or tasks or, goals within, like, say, service area orientation. You want the new hire to be well versed in the current easement portfolio, and they know most of the families that you're working with or whatever. So there's a lot of flexibility here, and I understand that this could probably be a little tricky, but if you take a little time to just think about a new person coming on and what you'd like to see them sort of accomplish over the 3 years, hopefully that will sort of, those goals will kind of slip into the task column here. One of the tasks could be helped support or lead the closing of 2 easements. That could be a pretty advanced goal in phase 3. We hope that this new hire helps us seek funding for 6 FPIG contracts. That could be another task. And the idea here is also to keep it very simple and short and specific. So numbers are great. Not looking for paragraphs or a narrative as to what you want this person to do, just real, like a bulleted list for both the tasks and the performance measures. So performance measures, simply a way to measure that task. So going back to the example of, we hope that this new hire, fills out 6 FPIG applications. The performance measure would be, how many applications have they filled out? And year 1, that might be 0 or 1. And then we'll track that over the 3-year period. So that is, again, I know it's a little tricky, but hopefully it bakes in some flexibility, but also puts everybody at a similar playing field with the 9 fixed objectives. This slide is kind of a repeat of what I was just going over, that the task and performance measure columns will become your work plan. And then the performance measures will be used to measure the quantity and quality of each task at that annual reporting stage. And then again, for both of them, just specific, thorough, but not a narrative phrase, a phrase at the most, just again, keeping it simple. So a little bit lighter work on you guys' behalf. And then the performance measure is a detailed way to measure that task. All right, the third and final upload is the financial worksheet. Again, if anybody's been doing the FPIG applications, this worksheet is very similar to the layout of FPIG, where you have in the first column your personnel costs, employee benefits, and then the other eligible project costs that we chatted about earlier on one of the early slides. So you're going to have, any sort of trainings or your equipment, like the computer and telephone, supplies, materials, all that stuff. And this is just a screenshot of that financial worksheet. In the file that you will download, there's gonna be 4 tabs, the bottom left corner. There'll be year 1, year 2, year 3, and then all the totals. The totals are auto calculated. So you can just put in year 1, year 2, year 3, and then the totals will auto generate. And so, year 1, you might be buying them, or might include a laptop, computer, and a phone. You probably won't be needing that for year 2 and 3. Wages will probably be consistent. Maybe they're going to you want to bake in cost of living, each year. So there's a slight increase, or however that works with your organization. But then that will be your budget, for year 1, year 2, year 3. And then again, all that's set and fixed. And when we come back for reporting, we'll just change the figures in year 1 to actuals and, observe any sort of change, and then move on to year 2. And so again, a little bit of heavy lifting here on the front end to create the work plan and this financial worksheet, but in theory, those documents will track all the way through the reporting to make it a little easier for the folks that are awarded. I think this is just kind of the text of what I was just saying. So, fill out your worksheet for all 3 years. The estimates will be replaced with the actuals. Similar to the work plan, the more specific, the better. Obviously, this is going to be, numbers, numeric, finances. And if you need additional lines, please feel free to add those in there. Insert as many rows as you need for costs that come up. All right, a little bit more about the scoring. So as we get applications in, we have those 34 questions. These are the 4 categories that we'll be scoring, all the applications in. Farmland protection need, organizational readiness, work plan, cost effectiveness. Work plan carrying the most weight, being that category that lays out what the impact and how you plan to move the needle and what exactly you hope to accomplish with this new hire or repositioned staff. And then there's preference points. There's 3 questions in SFS, and then we're going to be able to derive the other 3 are from your other the other questions. We'll be able to pull from there. And all this again is in the RFP and in the appendix pieces if you guys want some more detail on what exactly goes into each of these categories. So, and then to discuss a little further on like how the actual scoring, that's maybe the next slide. I have a chart, but there's 2 evaluators that will be assigned to the standard scoring of those 100 points. So evaluator 1, evaluator 2, they're each going to score up to 100 points. The combination or the aggregate of those 2 scores needs to hit 101, which is just over a 50% score, in order for it to be considered for an award. And then the program manager will assign preference points. So just one, applying of preference points will just happen once for each proposal. So those 6 questions will just get scored once. And then the total score will be the aggregate, the 200 plus the preference points. So kind of a funky scoring system with 226 as like your maximum score. But that is helpful when you have a bunch of applications as opposed to a 30 or 50 point score system where you may have it heavily clustered or even overlapping. So we want to prevent, ties. And with such a large spread of points, there's a less likely chance of us having tied scores. I think this next slide shows it kind of just in table form. So there'll be evaluator 1, evaluator 2, and then the 26 points. So 226 would be the highest possible points. We'll score the applications and then just list them from highest to lowest. And we'll run down the list until we run out of money, depending on what the ask is for the top scoring applicants. So again, that's $1 million total pot with $300,000 being the maximum award. So there's a potential that it may only be 3 awards. If every applicant asks for 300,000, we would just take the top 3. There's all, if somebody asks for 150,000 or 100,000, that may shake up the math a little bit. There's no preference. It's not like you're going to get a higher score if you ask for less money. There's a couple questions in the cost effectiveness, and you'll see that in the scoring criteria. But ask for what you need. This may be a little tough to see because the resolution's pretty low, but I just wanted to share, and this is more so for awardees, but just to kind of give you some context around the process we anticipate once folks are awarded. This is a Gantt chart showing from the award date up there at the kind of top left corner, month 0, over a 4-year period. So the first thing that's going to happen is we'll have to approve the contract. so that contract approval, it's going to take a couple months from the actual award date. And then, again, similar, folks are familiar with FPAY, there'll be different payments. We wanted to also make, since you're paying a salary, it makes sense for us to provide funding throughout the process so that the organization is not having to dole out a lot of money, you know, and go kind of into the red. And so we wanted to stay ahead of that, and make sure that folks are, you know, they show that they earn that payment. And so once the contract is approved, we'll do an advance payment of 25% to allow some funding to get things started. And then once you've secured, you know, an employee, there'll be a second interim payment of 15%. And then the other interim payments will be earned as the reporting happens annually. So year one, year two, it'll be pretty straightforward where there's a reporting time period and then we issue a payment. And then on the third year, when things are wrapping up, there's going to be a reconciliation process where you'll do the final report, and depending on how much of your goals that you created and made that you achieved, will determine that last 10%. So we'll get much more into this. This is, again, much more for like an awardee situation. Doesn't really have much to do with applying, but I just wanted to share this so that everyone knows what it looks like beyond an award. And so you can kind of mentally prepare for that or plan if that's helpful in your application process. So again, I guess just threw this out there, questions, due by May 1st to me, and we'll try, you know, get everything up by May 20th and hopefully in little waves. And that is all I had for the webinar this morning. So I don't know if anybody has any comments or questions. I saw a couple of things come in the chat. I might try to pull those up now. Again, yep. Got a lot of different things on my screen right now. I'm gonna, okay. Excellent. So yeah, I got one from Renee about confidentiality. Okay, cool. Handful of questions here. And this is excellent. I have a Excel sheet going with all the questions. So I'll be copying this list into that Excel. So thank you guys for adding to this here. And then, yeah. Okay. Great. And then maybe I'll enter my email into the chat just so that people can copy and paste that, as opposed to it being on the slide there. And then I'll probably stop sharing screen. Okay. Hopefully that came through. I'm going to stop recording.